Come on in. Yes, you can see my hair, which is fading on purpose. I've not added color to it in about 3 weeks now. So it's starting to get very ombre, like a tealish color on the bottom, and then move up. How do you pronounce these? Pfeffernusse. Pfeffernusse is the name of the cookie. It's giving Shigo from Kim Possible in like the best way. She's got black hair though. Her jumpsuit is lime green and black. Right here. Cheers. KK. You've never heard of these? Oh, these are good. Okay, so if you've ever had, this is going to be reiterated again when we start like the actual like playlist video. This is the live, and then we like cut a kind of like video out where there's like a little bit of an intro and an outro. Not streaming on YouTube. It should be going. It should be live on YouTube. It's kind of like a flavor boosted gingerbread cookie. Here, I'll show you guys what they look like. This is what they look like when they're finished. I had to make some. The dough needs to like chill in the refrigerator for like 24 hours if you want them to be really good. So I had to make some yesterday. And then they don't have to be glazed, but I prefer them to be glazed, which adds time on because the glaze has to like dry enough. But this is what they look like. And it's essentially like a gingerbread cookie and a Good and Plenty had a baby. Yeah. So it's got like the glaze, like the, you know, sugar glaze on the outside, sugar coating on the outside. And then it's got like anise in it. I prefer to have allspice in mine. That's not you, like it's not necessary. You're kind of hit or miss when you see allspice in a pfeffernusse. Some people do it, some people don't. I prefer the punch of allspice. But yeah, it's real nice. So it's like you take a gingerbread cookie and then you add in some black pepper, some allspice, and some anise. I also have some black cardamom in mine for fun. I don't know. And then you like glaze them. You can also do like powdered sugar. That's also kind of an option. And then mine are soft. So I like a soft pfeffernusse cookie with a glaze. You can also do something that's like closer to like, if you've had like a Mexican wedding cookie or like a Russian tea cookie, where they're kind of like crisp and like snap, but like crumbly and then kind of like melt as you chew. You can also have it in that style, but I prefer the soft ones. So. You're back? It does not contain that. Thanks, though. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to dye it brown, my hair. I want to transition into like orange, and I can't from green unless I go brown first. So... yeah, we should be live on both platforms. Okay, I guess I'm ready. I never prep an intro, which is a problem. I need to be better about that. I have no like hooks or like anything that I just am like, hey guys, let's make some cookies. And then my videos are 2 hours long and people are like, I'm not staying here for this, so. All right, baby. Whenever you're ready. Do I actually have anybody cooking with me today? I'm unable to bake at work. Honestly, that makes sense. Nice. I would bring these. I would honestly like make a big batch of these and take like these two to GCX, but I feel like they're just a little too fall, winter. It's not like a I don't know, light enough cookie in my like just taste wise, flavor wise for like 100-degree weather with 100% humidity in Orlando. I feel like I need a different cookie. Yeah, because they're a German Christmas cookie, so it's like, yeah. If I went and I was like, Christmas in July. I'm ready. Definitely want to make them. It's just kind of one of those things where, okay, I guess like the intro, right, is like you're looking for something that is something different. You know what I mean? Like everybody has their sugar cookies and their chocolate chip cookies and their gingerbread cookies, but like we're getting tired of the same old, right? Okay.
Ready?
I guess. I don't know. Okay. Yep.
3. Oh shit. Okay. 3, 2.
Hi, and welcome to A Little Spoon Kitchen. Are you looking for a new Christmas cookie? Tired of gingerbread? Tired of sugar cookies? The same old, same old? Well, today we are going to make Pfeffernusse. They are a German Christmas cookie. And I'd like to kind of say that they're similar to a gingerbread cookie, but also with a good and plenty, if anybody knows what that is. Kind of if they had a baby. So it's the gingerbread base, right? And then you're adding in a couple of other ingredients, including anise. So that licorice flavor, it's just got like a really nice, lovely, sweet licorice running throughout. And then a touch of allspice and black pepper to really give a punch of flavor that you otherwise did not get in a gingerbread cookie. And then it's glazed with a nice, crunchy, crispy glaze on the outside. And they are absolutely fantastic. They travel really well. So if your annual Christmas cookie box goes out through the mail, they will last a week and a half, 2 weeks. They'll get to their destination with plenty of time to eat without the cookie drying out, thanks to some of the ingredients that I will talk about today and also that lovely glaze. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that we're gonna do is we're going to talk about the fact that I did not take my eggs and butter out with plenty of time before we started the live. So I'm gonna do a quick rundown of what do I do if I did in fact not get my egg to room temperature or my butter softened enough before I decided that I needed to bake something. Yay, ADHD. So what I have here is a small bowl with my egg, and I'm actually going to turn on my tap water. And I'm gonna get this to like a tepid, maybe slightly warm temperature, and then I'm going to fill the bowl up around the egg and let the egg come to temperature while I'm working on the rest of the cookies. What I've also done here, if you can see, is I actually knew that this was the correct amount of butter. Typically for our lives, I will do the entire recipe for this cook-along, my Little Spoon cook-alongs. They happen once a month. It's from start to finish, no measuring, no anything done ahead of time. I did have to do a little bit of movie magic for this just because the cookies need to chill for 24 hours in the refrigerator. And this is supposed to be a single like one and done stream, and I can't stay on here for 24 hours. That would be absolutely insane. So I do have some pre-baked cookies just so that I can show everybody what they look like after they've chilled and baked, and we can kind of talk about that. but I am going to be making the dough from start to finish and talking all about that as we move forward. Because of that, I knew that I had a single chunk of butter, and because I already made a batch, it's basically I guess what? Where's my butter? Let's just take a quick look here. Half a cup of butter. So I had a 227 gram brick of butter, and I only need 113.5 grams, which is half of that. I used half yesterday. I'm using the other today. So this is technically already pre-measured, but it was pretty solid and pretty chilled. I just took it out of the refrigerator, and what I've done is I've cut it up into really small pieces. Cutting it into really small pieces allows for more surface area, and the more surface area there is, the more ambient air temperature can kind of hit the outside of the butter and soften it faster. Another thing, so like I took this out maybe 10 minutes ago, and I've already can like press into, so this is mostly where I need it to be. If another option that you could do is you can fill up a jar or bowl with some hot water. Fill this up real quick. And I'm just gonna sit that right there to come to temperature. So something that you can do is you can fill up a jar or a bowl with really hot water, pour it out, and then just kind of stick your butter stick inside the cup. So you kind of just like trap it kind of like you're using it like a cloche, and that ambient temperature from the glass will also help to like soften the butter without it fully melting, because you don't have constant heat. It will cool to room temperature. So it's just like a little touch of heat to help it on its journey, and then everything will come to room temperature and be almost perfectly softened. So if you do, like, those are kind of two options that you could do. This is probably my most recommended. I think it comes to temperature a little bit more uniformly than if you were going to do a jar or a bowl kind of used as a cloche, but it is an option. So just, you can consider those. The first thing that I'm going to do, just because this is kind of one of those things that you have a couple of moving parts throughout this recipe, right? So obviously the first thing you end up doing is creaming the butter and the sugar, but you also have several other ingredients that are going to be kind of added as you get to certain steps. And I like to have all of that kind of done in advance, done and measured out in advance. So we are currently going to measure out, there's a lot of spices in here. We're gonna measure out all of our dry ingredients, which includes a number of spices. And I'm going to do that first while we wait for this to continue coming to our softened temperature. And then we are going to measure out some of the other more liquidy ingredients that are gonna go in after we've creamed our butter and sugar. And then everything will kind of be ready to go once I get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure out the flour. And I am going to use a kitchen scale today. If I mess up with the kitchen scale, I may jump into volumetric measurements. Sometimes it's easier with really small amounts of things to do the measuring spoons instead of a kitchen scale, but I do prefer a kitchen scale just because I feel like it gives much more consistent results. And a lot of people don't weigh their flour correctly, or other things for that matter. And so you end up with like inconsistent baked goods, and using a kitchen scale completely gets rid of that. So for example, I'm just gonna go ahead and, you need 3 cups of flour. I'm gonna go ahead and weigh out 375 grams, okay? My typical cup of flour, okay, is 125 grams. A cup of flour can be anywhere from 122 to 138 grams at the correct amount. That's kind of a weird thing to say. That's kind of the window that if you go and you look at any kind of baking blog, if you're going to like King Arthur Baking, or if you're going to Sally's baking blog, or you're going to, I don't know, like any number of whatevers, right, that are out there, and they are a baker worth their salt, then they are going to be using baking grams somewhere in there. They'll offer cups, but they'll also offer grams, and those grams are going to be somewhere between 122 grams and 138 grams. If anybody is going under or over that, just assume that they're not weighing correctly, or they're allowing it to be calculated by a computer and they're not doing it themselves, or they're not measuring their flour correctly. So a lot of the times people might do one of two things. One is just kind of scooping in, leveling off, and putting it into your bowl. Another thing is they may say take a whisk or just kind of like move flour around and say like, oh, I'm aerating it, and then kind of do one of those and then do this. And so this is going to be a better option than like scooping right in and then doing this. But you can add 30 to 40% more flour than a recipe needs if you're not weighing out your flour or you're not properly aerating it. The way to properly aerate it, and I'll show you this right now. I'm not gonna end up doing this in the long run because I'm just gonna weigh this out, but I have my 1 cup. I always keep a spare, just like random cup. I think this is like a third of a cup. A random just scoop in my flour. And the way that you aerate your flour properly and measure out your flour properly, if you're not using a scale, is you're going to take it and you're gonna kind of just do one of these. And you're just going to scoop and then kind of gently shake and pour into the cup that you're using, or the volumetric measuring cup that you're using. And then you're going to do a gentle like that. And then that is the correct amount for a recipe, or somewhere within that range that I was talking about. I guess, yeah. I lost a little bit on the top of that one, but I'm essentially going to just keep going because I know what I need because I've pre-weighed this out. And I'm going to 375. But that's how you measure. Scooping in like this. Actually, you know what? I can do an example. So that came out to a little over 120, doing it that way. And I had a little indent in there that I was ignoring. But say I'm doing, hey, I just opened this stupid thing up and I'm scooping, actually need the 1 cup, scooping, all the way in. Why not? Let's just do an example. And then dumping, 143.9 grams. That's too much. So every scoop is going to be too big. Like I said, I'm using 125, and now I've added an extra 20 grams per cup. And I've got 3 cups. So you've got an extra like 65 grams worth of flour in here. So your cookies are going to turn out being, your cakes, your cookies, basically anything bread is going to turn out tougher than it would otherwise turn out if you were using a kitchen scale or you were correctly weighing and measuring. If I was, say, doing this little like, oh, I'm aerating it, kind of making it gentle. Let's see. It's still 132. So that's a little bit less, right? It's a little less, but it's still not quite what you want it to be. So let's go back. I'm gonna do this. I'm just gonna weigh it out now. This is why I don't bake, yeah. For anybody who is here at a later date, you found this video, you're interested in making these cookies, know that I do random tangents like that all the time. I like to talk about the ingredients, I like to talk about the science, I like to talk about the technique to make sure that we're kind of all on a similar page and not getting kind of lost in the sauce, so to speak. I will also be communicating with my computer here. This was a live previously. And because it was a live, I have people asking questions and making comments, and I'm going to be talking to them. So I'll be attempting to get in as much information as I can, but hopefully people will ask some good questions. I can answer those as well. Maybe a question that you're having down the line will get asked here, and I will be answering it. So that is the 375. Communicating with my computer, I know. Yeah, for the person who said they make their own bread, hold on a second, go away. And it always seems to turn out fine. It's because you know what it's supposed to feel like. I've followed recipes before that give grams, and I'll be like kind of messing with the dough, and I'm like, this is not correct. This does not feel right. once you know how a dough is supposed to feel, or like if you do it enough, whether that be pasta or bread or whatever, if you know what it's supposed to look like, feel like, smell like, that kind of a thing, it becomes a lot easier to not have to use measurements. And you can just we didn't have anything like this, right? Before kitchen scales, what did we do? We did everything by feel, right? And so you just have the experience and the knowledge to be able to like throw something together and be like, that feels like what it's supposed to feel like, right? But that takes time to kind of build up. And so a lot of people will look for a recipe so that they can get to the point where you already are, which is great. So you thought I would ignore you? Never. Never. Okay, the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna start our spices. Okay, so I'm just gonna read through the measurements here of all of the spices because there are quite a few of them, and then I'm just gonna like go to town on it, right? So you got 2 teaspoons or 3.8 grams of ground cinnamon. I've got a half a tablespoon or 2.4 grams of ground ginger, 3/4 of a teaspoon or 1.5 grams of ground cloves, 3/4 of a teaspoon or 1.4 grams of ground black pepper, 1/8 of a teaspoon of ground allspice, which is 0.3 grams, a half a tablespoon of anise seeds, which is 3.6 grams, and those are also going to get ground up, and then a half a teaspoon of fresh grated nutmeg, which comes out to about 0.4 grams. The last thing is salt. So 1 teaspoon of Diamond Crystal Kosher salt. That is the salt that I use. If you are using a different salt than a Diamond Crystal Kosher salt, there's a little bit of wiggle room in this just because there is quite a bit of like dark flavor, depth, like flavor, how do I say this? Sugars with depth of flavor. So we have molasses, I've got some date paste, and I have some brown sugar. So there's a little play in the joints with salt. You may get away with another like flaky sea salt, but I would say to be careful if you're using a table salt or if you're using like Morton salt or something like that. They have a much more compact crystalline structure, and so they're actually denser. So if you're going by volume, if you're using the 1 teaspoon, this is not the same thing as the flour, but it's kind of similar in that the kitchen scale is going to give you a more consistent result, because if you're going by volume and something has a denser structure, it's going to weigh more. And so if you use like a Morton versus the Diamond Crystal Kosher salt, even if they're both kosher salts, you're going to be getting like 20 to 30 more percent, like 20 to 30 more percent of salt in your cookies than you are if you're going to use the Diamond Crystal. So just be aware of that. If it's table salt, it's going to be even crazier. So if you weigh your salt, then it doesn't matter what salt you're using because you're always going to put the correct amount in. If you're using volume with salt, sometimes that can get a little complicated. And it's easy when you're cooking, right? When you're just kind of sprinkling in some salt, you know how things are going to taste, you know kind of what the feel is. But if you're doing it with baking, that can be a little scary. And I personally think that bakers tend to undersalt their baked goods. So this salt is like the correct amount of salt for me. And it's probably more than what a lot of other people put into their cookies or into their baked goods. There still is a little play in the joints, but if you go like too much over, they will become salty. So just kind of be careful in there and pay attention to what salt you're using. I did specifically say Diamond Crystal Kosher salt just to make sure that we're like all above board. And we all know exactly what went into this. Pretty much everything else you can just kind of use on a whim, but that specifically, I wanted to make sure that we knew what the ingredient was so that we can pay attention to that. So now we've listed out the spices that are going to be going into this. I'm going to go ahead and get started. I am going to actually load them all into my spice grinder. Yesterday I used my mortar and pestle for funsies because I started adding in the already pre-ground ingredients, and then realized that I have 2 spices, my anise seeds and then my black cardamom. I have them just as seeds, they're not pre-ground. And so I actually did those up in the mortar and pestle because small amounts of spices tend to not blend as well in a spice grinder. But now that I'm on the live and I'm paying attention to what I'm doing, I'm gonna go ahead and do all of the ingredients in here. Even if something is pre-ground, you can put it into your spice grinder with items that are not pre-ground, and that volume will help grind up the other stuff better. And so it's kind of like if you're trying to grind up, I don't know, a peanut butter or a smoothie or whatever, like something, if you're making pesto, I don't know, in a food processor or a blender, and you don't have enough in there and it goes under the blaze and it just kind of is like whipping around and like nothing's actually happening and nothing's blending. It's kind of the same concept where, you know, the more volume you have, the better of a like puree, chop, blend, mix, whatever you're going to get. So I'm gonna add all of the stuff into here. And I am gonna use my kitchen scale again. The kind of scary thing about the kitchen scale, and this is where I'm like, you know, maybe I will use the volumetric measurements for these guys, is that when you're working with really, really small numbers, so if you noticed I said that the nutmeg was 0.4 grams, a kitchen scale typically, like you're lucky if it picks up on 0.2 grams. It might pick up if you've got like over a gram or a half a gram, and then it'll be like a little more sensitive to the smaller measurements. But when you're just getting started at 0 and you're trying to add 0.4 grams of something, it's like doesn't pick up on it very well. And so that can be slightly frustrating with a kitchen scale. So I may kind of go back and forth, we'll see. But I'm gonna go ahead and run through these guys right quick. So. Are the anise seeds from star anise? You can use star anise. I believe, yes. You can use star anise, but it's not as strong because it has that woody coating. So it has the woody coating on. I didn't bring them down here. I do have star anise upstairs. But that coating is kind of taken away and just the seeds are used. So the seeds are stronger. If you're using the star anise, you're gonna need to up the amount that you're using in order to get the same flavor. And I wanna say, I have somewhere in here. Yeah, I do. In the notes, I actually, and I'll go back over this later, for substitutions, if you cannot find anise seed, I will give you some information about star anise and then also an anise extract if that's something that you need some help with. Yeah, allspice is a berry. It does. It tastes like a big blend. Oh, hey, it's Nightbot. Thanks, Nightbot. Yeah, and it's punchy. Allspice is super punchy. And so like a lot of the like baking spices, right? So something that you think about when you think about a pumpkin pie, they're super mellow. So aside from maybe ginger, most of those are like earthy, mellow, kind of like really good deep flavors, or maybe slightly like helping elevate sweetness. But allspice is actually like, it stays pretty punchy, and that's why I like it so much in these cookies. These cookies, so they're called Pfeffernusse, right? But Pfeffernusse is essentially in German, right? If you're gonna translate that into English, means pepper nut. So the biggest thing is that it's peppery and punchy, and then it gets balanced by all of the sweet elements in the cookie. And so that's kind of what you're trying to do. And if that's the point, then I don't want it to be a gingerbread cookie. I want it to have punch, and I want it to like really kind of be like, oh yeah, like that's a really interesting, good cookie. And so that's why I do have that allspice in there, because I think it lends better into like that slight punchiness that I want to have balanced out by the sweetness. I don't want it to just be a sweet cookie. Okay, let's do this. So I've got this here. We're gonna go for our 3.8 grams. Maybe. I think this is going to give me a hard time. Okay. Should get a spoon. I'm gonna get a spoon. Hold the phone. I'm scared that this is just gonna like plop out. 3.8 grams of our cinnamon. And then we're gonna do, and then I'm gonna go down further and I'm gonna do the nutmeg. Oh, it's moving around on me. The cord is causing it to change its weight. Dang it. Okay, cord. Fine. The whole thing's on now. Okay, we'll do nutmeg next. Because it's such a small, I want to make sure that I have something weighed out, and then I'll just tack on the 0.4 grams so that it's a little bit more responsive. So I'm going to do the ground ginger now. That's 2.4 grams. Okay, 2.4. And then I'm going to do some grated nutmeg. And I want to get 0.4 grams of this. So I'm just going to keep going until I see 2.8. Okay. Now we're gonna do 1.5 grams of ground cloves. I do have ground cloves. Does not fit, that's fun. Okay, 1.5 grams. Okay. Okay, we got 1.4 grams of black pepper, which I forgot to bring down because I used my pepper mill from upstairs. I'm gonna have to send my husband to go get me an ingredient. You can do the jar of whole black pepper if you want, honey. Okay, moving on. So we've got our ground allspice. We're using 1/8 teaspoon. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I was gonna say you could do the whole one because I just need to put the correct amount of weight in. It's going into the spice grinder, but that's fine. I'll take it. Thank you. You eat Pfeffernusse every year during Christmas because it's so good. It's so good. The first time I had Pfeffernusse, I was in Georgia, in Helens, Georgia. And Helens, Georgia is a sister town to Fussen, Germany, which I've also been to. Just gonna try to get these out of here without this stupid thing going. Okay, there we go. I only need 1.4 grams. And it's like, because it's a sister city to Fussen, Germany, the whole town looks like a small German like chalet town kind of a thing. And it was really cute. And they had a bag of Pfeffernusse in there. And I saw it and was like, oh, I've heard of this. I want to try this. And they were so good. Although the ones that I had, they had like a vanilla coating on some of them, and then they had a chocolate coating on the others. And I've never seen Pfeffernusse with chocolate coating. And to be honest, they weren't that great. The vanilla ones were much better. I think the frosting just like, because the frosting was so sweet, it balanced it out better than the chocolate one did. The chocolate one had a little bit more of a bitter element, obviously. And it just wasn't as good. There we go, 1.4 grams. This spice cake honestly is a good substitute, I think. Very similar. Okay, let me put this back over here. All right, we are moving on to our allspice. I need 0.3 grams of our allspice. I do have a ground allspice here. I don't have the berries. Could not find the berries, but this is close enough. And again, it's really low. It's only 0.3 grams. It's about 1/8 of a teaspoon. So I'm gonna make sure, I'm gonna use 1/8 of a teaspoon because I can't get my spoon in here. So we're gonna, it is a very small amount. Okay. Okay. Now we're going to move on to our black cardamom. That's going to be 0.8 grams. And to me, the black cardamom, again, is just like an added. To me, it gives another like earthy kind of punchiness that you otherwise would not have in a lot of other recipes. So this is kind of like an extra from me. The non-traditional extra. Just going a little at a time. I don't want to overwhelm this recipe with the black cardamom. Okay, the last thing, I already did the nutmeg. It looks like we've got everything in here except for the anise. So we're gonna add 3.6 grams of this. This is that licorice flavor. That's why there's so much of this going in. Okay. And now I'm going to grind this together. Okay, so we're gonna grind this up real quick. Maybe. Come on. There it goes. Almost. Whew, I might sneeze too, by the way. You get to watch me sneeze today. Okay. So we got all of our spices. Nice and blended. And that's gonna go directly into our flour. I will probably have, oh, actually that cleared out pretty well. Sometimes the spices will get like stuck to the bottom and I have to like scrape them out, but that actually came out real nice and easy. Move this guy off to the side. Okay, and then we're going to add our salt and we're going to do our baking soda. Those are also dry ingredients. The salt, I want to use 4 grams of salt. Which is here. I like not having to get things dirty and like add extra cleaning. Oops, too much. Me not paying attention. Okay, good enough. Okay, salt. And then the baking soda, stick with me on this. I live at a high altitude, so the baking soda for this recipe is correct for sea level or lower altitudes. Anything under, let's call it anything under 5,000 feet. Don't know what that is in meters, apologies. Anything under that, you're good to go with this recipe, but because I live above that, I actually have to down the leavening by about 30%. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to eyeball it. These are pretty, because there's so much flour in these, and because this isn't like bread and I'm not using like an active leavener, I'm just using a chemical leavener like baking soda, I'm not super worried about like what that number actually turns out to be. I could do the math and then like weigh it out, but I'm not going to do that for today. I just know that at my altitude, about 70% of what is listed in a recipe. I'm at 5,800 feet, almost 6,000 feet. So if you come across a recipe and you are at a relative elevation that I am at, just down the leavening by about 30% and use only 70% of what the recipe calls for, and you're good to go. Good luck. Have fun. So, ayo, simultaneous. All right, so I'm going to be using a half a teaspoon of baking soda. It's 3.5 grams. I'm probably going to use closer to 3.2 grams. I am also going to just use a spoon. I don't know why I even picked those up. We're going to zero that out and then go to town. Okay, I want to use, let's see, 3 point. There we go. Cool. Okay, now I'm going to take a whisk. I'm going to whisk all these guys together. Lost my leveler. Okay. And make sure that this is really well incorporated. I'm honestly so surprised I did not sneeze. I'm so, oh wait, nope. Feel it. I can feel it now that I'm mixing. Really surprised that I did not sneeze. Just gonna make sure this is really well incorporated so that when we're adding it in to the wet ingredient mixture that we've made in our stand mixer, that the flavors aren't kind of like all like I want them to be very well incorporated. The flour, adding flour, especially when you're baking cookies, is like the last, quickest, fastest step that you can possibly do with cookies. Everything else is going for like several minutes at a time. But for this dough in particular, and for a lot of other cookies, the longer that you're mixing the flour in, the denser and harder they get. And we don't want them. When we think dense, we want like fudgy and soft. We don't want hard and like lots of gluten formation and like chewy. And so you really want to make sure that your dry ingredients are well incorporated so when you add them, you're not having to mix them during the part that you're adding them, that they're already kind of pre-mixed and they can mix in well into the stuff that you already have like ready to go. So, cool. Next, we're going to start measuring out some of our other wet ingredients. I honestly am going to, I'm probably going to just pull my stand off and add them one at a time so I can weigh them on my scale. Let me put this back. But I do want to talk about real quick, I want to talk about some date paste. Let me get my sugar. So these are all of the spices and stuff that we had earlier. I don't know why I didn't just, or you could just turn this around. That's fine. Okay, so our first wet ingredient and the one that we're going to start with, obviously we're going to cream our butter and our sugar together. So I'm going to weigh out my brown sugar and then I'm going to talk about some of the other ingredients. Okay, so I need 110 grams of brown sugar. I have dark brown sugar in here. If you don't have dark brown sugar, just light brown sugar is fine. It's not going to be, we're already putting molasses in. It's not going to be that big of a difference. The whole difference between light brown sugar and dark brown sugar is just a little extra molasses. So, because brown sugar isn't really like brown sugar anymore. Or at least it's really hard to find. Most of the time, brown sugar is refined white sugar with molasses added back into it. Okay, so we've got our brown sugar here. And then I'm going to use this kind of as we go for our other stuff. Let's talk really quickly about date paste, and then I will get to creaming the butter and the sugar. Everything that I wanted to weigh out is weighed out. Let's check on our egg. My egg is at room temperature. Yay. So that's ready to go. The molasses, the honey, and then my date paste, I will be weighing out kind of as I'm going in between steps, right? So we're going to start mixing up our butter and getting that nice and fluffy. Then we're going to cream the butter and the sugar together. Then you're going to scrape the sides of your bowl down and add these individual ingredients one by one until they come back to the same texture that they started as before you added them in, okay? So it's kind of like a stop and go, which allows me to weigh these out and not have to worry about it. And then once I hit the point that I need to hit, I can go ahead and start just dumping my flour and then be done with it. So the date paste, let's talk about that real quick. I think in the recipe online, I have a link that takes you to the date paste that I like to purchase. I purchased it, so I was purchasing it from a Middle Eastern market back in Florida. I went to an Indian market hoping that they would have some date paste, but they only had dried dates, which made me a little sad. But it is quite thick and dark. Let's see if you can, it's pretty stiff. Can kind of ball it around a little bit. I like this. It's got a really deep, wonderful flavor. And it's thick enough that I'm not adding a ton of liquid into my baked goods. It's fantastic to add sweetness, to add depth of flavor, and to keep your baked goods moist. So if you want to make oatmeal cookies anytime soon, if you want to make a cookie that you want to stay moist or not be, how do I say this? Stay moist as in you want the cookie to be a soft cookie just in general, right? So in my head, that's typically an oatmeal. Date paste is a fantastic ingredient to substitute for sugars. So if you're seeing brown sugar or something like that, you can kind of substitute the date paste at a 1-to-1 for the brown sugar and just minimize your liquid slightly. Now, that's if you have this specific date paste. It is linked. I believe I also have it linked in my Amazon storefront. If you're going to make your own date paste, which I did yesterday just so I could talk about this today. If you're going to make your own date paste, a lot of the times there's a lot, I added half the liquid that the recipe said to add, and this is still a lot looser. If I was going to touch this, it's almost like an applesauce texture. This is a lot looser. And so I have to be aware of the fact that this has a lot more moisture in it for a baked good than what the recipe was written for. So if you're using a homemade date paste, right, that is thicker than what you would consider, I guess, mashed up raisins, right, then you're gonna want to add a touch more flour to make up for the viscosity of this specific ingredient. I will also say this flavor is a lighter flavor than a concentrated date paste that you can get from the store. I guess I should say from a specialty store or some kind of market. If you have, I've never seen date paste at an Asian market, but I have seen them at Indian markets. Unfortunately, not the one that I have here in this town. I've seen it more often in a Middle Eastern market than anywhere, but you never know. If you have a local market or something like that sells, ingredients that are from certain cultures or something like that, you probably have a better chance of finding it. But just so that you know, you can also make it. You just have to be aware of the fact that you're adding more liquid and that it is going to be a slightly brighter flavor and not quite as deep of a flavor. This is also something I found. I did find this at a regular grocery store, and I'm seeing this more and more often. I think I found this at a King Super. I was just looking around. I was there has to be other options for people at stores. And so I did buy it. I'm not using it today. I might use it in coffee or something like that. But this is date syrup. We're getting the same flavor, but again, this is much more liquidy than the date paste that I have linked. or a homemade date paste. So you have to just be aware of the fact that you're adding this and that the flour will need to be upped just slightly to make sure that you're taking care of that, the difference there. You can get date pears. Yeah, it'll be too moist, but you can add, if you can offset with some flour, you should be okay. Here, I'm gonna pour this out into into a spoon or something so you guys can see what this looks like. So this one is actually closer to a syrup. Obviously it says syrup on the thing, but you can see the consistency difference between this and this and this. And so we're using like 2 tablespoons of date paste, okay? So you're using 41 grams of date paste. The weight in grams will be different from this paste to this to this. The homemade date paste will actually weigh less, and the syrup will actually, the syrup would probably be somewhere in between the two, to be honest, because the viscosity is thinner, so it's more compact, but also it's not, because it is like thinner, then it's gonna actually have like less weight. So there's kind of a weird situation going on there. But what you're gonna wanna do, if you go by volume, just be aware that like you're gonna want it by grams. You're not gonna want it by volume if you're not using the exact thing. So if you're using this exact paste or similar thickness in paste, viscosity of paste, then you can go ahead and use the volumetric measurement and use that 2 tablespoons. But if you're making a homemade or you're doing a syrup, you wanna make sure that you're using the grams and you're using a kitchen scale so that you're not changing the recipe by more than just the viscosity. And then all you have to do is worry about the flour. If you're doing it by volume, you're gonna change up the recipe probably a little bit too much. Okay, I'm gonna set these aside. Cool, fun. Let's get going. So I'm gonna start with my butter. Now that we've talked about date paste, we're gonna actually start the recipe. We're done with prep. I can see that people are typing into chat and I need to get back over there and read what we're saying. It would be helpful if I plugged this in. What do you think? There we go. Okay. We're gonna get that going. Now I want to see the butter completely fanned out around the bowl. And then I also want it to get like a slightly lighter color. And it depends on what butter you're using for what that means. If you're using a butter that's already really light in color, if there is a color change, that's awesome. If not, that's kind of okay. I just want to make sure that it's completely smooth all the way around and that it almost gets a little fluffy. Oh, okay. Do you spy weck jars? You spy mason jars. I guess that's kind of similar to a weck jar, but they're just mason jars. I'm not sure what you mean. Like what specific thing you're looking at and asking if it's a weck jar. But I do want to own a weck jar, but I don't currently own one. Most of the time when people are making cookies, and they're creaming their butter and their sugar, they don't do it for long enough. So I am going to talk a little bit about that and kind of point out indicators today. Part of me wishes that I did have more butter than I needed so that I could show the difference in the color between the two. Okay, but this is good. So this is where I want to be with my butter. Let's just do a quick kind of show and tell here so you can see kind of inside. You'll notice the butter is nicely whipped and it is in lighter in color. It's almost the texture of like a frosting, right? And so that's what I want that to be at before I add my sugar. If you add your butter and your sugar at the same time and the butter hasn't been fully whipped, it's not going to incorporate as well. And then those sugar crystals aren't going to mix. Okay, so the water and the sugar crystals aren't going to mix well with the water and the butter and dissolve. So you want some of those sugar crystals to break down and dissolve and create a more uniform paste than if you were just going to mix the butter and the sugar together, and that was the end of it. We're gonna dump in our brown sugar. And this bowl is gonna get used later, so I'm gonna just set that aside. And now I'm going to mix until this again becomes the consistency of a frosting. So every ingredient that we're adding, as we move forward, we want to end up being the consistency of frosting before we add the next one. And we are going to make sure that we are scraping down and into the bottom of the bowl every time we add an ingredient so that we know that they're all incorporating from the bottom all the way up the sides correctly. Yes, we are at high altitude. I'm at 5,800 feet, 5,850, give or take, depending on where I am in town. So I'm like slightly under Denver, but enough that I do have to mess around with altitude. So I guess a couple of different things that I have to do. I'm not sure how loud that is over the mic. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah? Okay, so something that you're gonna have to do if you're in Denver, I highly recommend lowering the leavening. So if it says to use yeast, like active yeast or like some kind of instant yeast, sourdough discard or something like that, if you're using a baking soda or a baking powder, any of those ingredients, total them up or like look at each individual one and lessen it by about 30%. You could probably do, if you're above 5,000 feet, or if you're above 6,000 feet, I'd say maybe 35, and then like kind of keep going up like every like 2,000 feet, kind of like add like a 5 to the how much you're taking off, and subtract by 5% more. I'm roughly 70% of what a sea level recipe will give me the correct amount of leavening. And that's what I've been working with. You also need to add slightly more liquid, slightly less flour, or just like vice versa. And then you need to bake at a lower temperature as well, because it takes, so at sea level, boiling is 212 Fahrenheit. Here it's 203 Fahrenheit. And so things cook faster at lower temperatures here. So you have to decrease your oven and just let it cook for like slightly longer and it'll be good. Okay. This is where I want this to be. So let's do this. You can see, and this is why I'm saying we have to scrape down the sides of our bowls. So you can see the top part of it is like a darker color and the bottom is like a lighter, more whipped texture and color. And so what I'm wanting to make sure that I'm doing is I want to make sure that all of this is like really well incorporated. And the only way to do that, instead of just keep adding ingredients, right? Because I can whip this pretty much as like there's like a lot of play in the joints when it comes to like creaming butter and sugar and adding all of your wet ingredients together and having them mix compared to once you get the flour in. So do all of your scraping, incorporating. If you need extra time, you have it here to make sure that everything is well mixed. And then once that flour is in, that you're not going for much longer. So I'm just gonna make sure that I'm scraping everything down. Actually, and then I'm going to, nice. Going to add in my next ingredient. But as you can see, like this is a much, so like that's the brown sugar and the butter, right? It's like really nice and light, really nice and fluffy. You can obviously still see some of those like sugar crystals in there, but it's really not, they're not like not super prominent, I should say. Okay, so now we're going to weigh out and add in our date paste. And that's going to be 41.5 grams. I think I have enough in here. And if I don't, I can just add from the other stuff that I just made because I have pretty close to what I need. Oh, I do have what I need. Okay, cool. Okay, said 41.5 grams. Almost there. There we go. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna do the same thing. Wait. And we're going to mix until the date paste is well incorporated. This is not going to incorporate all the way in the way that any kind of syrup or sugar or something that starts uniform is, because this is coming from like actual dates. Like there will be kind of thicker and like smaller specks and stuff like that that are gonna kind of remain, but you want it mostly to be added in and incorporated all the way into something that looks relatively uniform. It's never gonna get all the way, but it'll get really close. Okay, moving on to our next ingredient. Let's see if I can give a good example of what I was talking about. I'm not sure how much you can see. I don't know how good we have it here, but you can see like it's kind of flecked, right? It's not like fully changed the color or any of that kind of stuff, but there's just like kind of smaller flecks that are running throughout. Let's see. Yeah, so you can see them a little bit better here. And that's okay, because that's just part of like a date has like, you know, a skin, and it doesn't fully break down into, unless you're using like an actual syrup. If you're using the paste, you still have kind of like the whole fruit of the date. It's not going to break down in the same way. Okay, so now we're going to add in our molasses, which I'm going to have to open both of these for. You are not using sulfured molasses, the blackstrap molasses. That is far too bitter. You're going to be using just your straight unsulfured molasses. And you are going to need, let's tear that. You're going to need 82 grams. So this is kind of a really good example of how volume and weight are so different. So this is a quarter cup. A quarter cup, if you're talking about water, right? So the viscosity of something changes its weight. Water is 60 milliliters, but when it comes to, or 60 grams, right? So a quarter cup is 60 mils of water, 60 grams of water. But of the molasses, it's 82 grams. And that is it's a really big difference, right? Okay, let's move on to our other jar. I'll come to that later. Okay. Almost, and 82. Okay. Now we're gonna mix in our molasses. And honestly, if you're making gingerbread cookies, this is how you should be making them too. Is kind of adding each ingredient in, getting it really well incorporated, making sure that it's all like mixed in really, really well. And then every time the texture goes back to what it was when you first added it, or just before you added it, then that's where you kind of like are your jumping off point for what you're looking for texture wise. It doesn't take really long, but it's just something that like we really should be making sure. I'm going to scrape down the sides of my bowl again. Make sure that I'm getting underneath. I can see a couple spots that are not getting mixed, so I want to make sure I'm scraping those around, moving that around so that I know that will maybe be mixed correctly. Okay, now we're going to do our honey, and that's the same thing. So the 1/4 cup of molasses is 82 grams. A 1/4 cup of honey is 85 grams. Not a huge difference, but just so that you can kind of see how viscosity plays a role in how things weigh, how much things weigh. Okay, this might take a little bit. This is an old container of honey, so it's a little crystallized. It's harder to get out. This is where all the grip strength comes from, squeezing honey out of bottles. Whew. I should just open the top. I don't know why I'm doing this to myself. Okay, yep, we're gonna open the top of this thing. Okay. Just the question is it going to come out too quickly now? We'll see. Crystallized honey is fine. It'll get broken down. It's not a big deal. That's close enough. Okay. Got our honey. And we're going to mix that again, just like we were mixing our other stuff, one at a time. And then the last thing we're going to add is our egg. And that's the thing that's going to look the worst, but I promise you it'll come back together. Okay. Scrape down the bowl sides one more time. You can see I still have this kind of frosting texture. That's what we're looking for. And now we're going to add in our egg. I always crack my eggs on flat surfaces. I don't do the side of the bowl. The side of the bowl pushes egg shards into the eggshell, and then you end up kind of having those pieces drop down with the egg, and then you're like stuck fishing things out. If you have lots of eggs that you're going to be chopping, you're going to be cracking for a recipe, I highly recommend cracking into another bowl and then moving the eggs over so that we're not going to like have that issue where you like drop a couple eggs in, or you get the wrong amount of yolks, or you like something happens or whatever, and you're like, oh my God, I just ruined this recipe. Just do it on the side and then bring everything over. So you can see, like, this looks gross. We'll show you guys. It looks gross. Doesn't look appetizing at all. But this egg has lots of protein, fat, and water, and that will all emulsify really well once it gets mixed well enough. I just messed up my spatula trying to give examples of stuff. There we go. So I'm gonna let this go until we come back. You'll notice it is not a frosting texture. We're gonna come back to that frosting texture. So I'm just gonna let that happen. It's gonna take a minute. Almost there. Once it's not so wet and everything's better incorporated, I'll turn the speed up just a little bit to make sure everything is really getting there. Okay, so now this is like the whole time I was saying, like, we're looking frosting. So previously, before the egg, you're really getting like the frosting that comes out of the cans, right? Like those like kind of jar can things that you get at the store that are like pre-made frosting, right, for cakes. Now this is what you're looking at, like more of a buttercream, right? So we've got everything. I'm going to scrape down the bowl, get all of this really good to make sure that I'm getting all the stuff at the bottom really scraped. And then same thing up here. Stuff that's kind of higher up isn't getting incorporated. And then I'm going to run this one more time, but you can see that this is now like, it's almost like a buttercream frosting consistency. So this is like a really nice whipped frosting, not just like what's coming out of a jar at the grocery store. Okay, we're gonna let this go one more time for just a little bit longer, and then we're gonna start adding our flour in. And you'll see the change, like when you're making it, you'll see the difference. That egg immediately, like everything gets really light. The color lightens, the texture lightens, you're aerating, you're putting so much air into it, and it just makes a really nice soft cookie. And you want it to get almost ribbony and like a little bit of a light sheen on it. So if it still looks like it's a little curdled, like if there's like sugar granules are like really, really prominent, that's not where you want it to be. You want to go just a little bit further than that. Okay, we'll call this a day. So let me show you. So see, we've got kind of like a whipped frosting texture, and that's what we're going for. I'm going to put this back on. Actually, I'm not done yet. That's the last part. We're going to start adding in our dry ingredients now. Okay. So little by little, if you add the flour mixture too fast, obviously you're going to get poofed in the face with a bunch of flour, and we don't want that for anybody here. So you're just going to do little bit by little bit. If you want to do it by like spoonfuls, that's fine. I find that this works well enough. Add a little bit of flour. Once it looks like it's gotten incorporated into our wet ingredients, you can go and add a little bit more flour. Oh, my poor KitchenAid motor doesn't like this. I prefer the tilt head stand mixers to any other kind of stand mixer. But this guy's he's a really old, a really old mixer. Actually, let's stick this in the sink. I'll wash that later. And we're done. It's a really old mixer. And so he doesn't like a lot of work. Sorry, buddy. Okay. Obviously, I still have a little bit in here that I'm going to incorporate. The rest of this, I'm going to incorporate with a spatula and not using the mixer. Once you no longer see like big white patches of flour, that's when you're going to turn it off. You don't want to overmix this. Overmixing this by even like a minute can like make it a tougher cookie, and we don't want that. So I'm just going to scrape down my beater here, and then I'm going to hand mix the rest of this nice and gently. So you can see like how long I was letting all those other ingredients incorporate, and then like the flour and the dry ingredients went in, and I'm like, okay, done. Done. You get a minute, maybe. I wish that I didn't care so much about waste, because I wouldn't have to scrape this as much as I'm currently doing that. All right, I guess this is good enough. Okay, and then I'm going to scrape and kind of just gently fold any flour that I see that's not been incorporated. I'm seeing some near the bottom. I'm just going to get underneath it and make sure that's getting pressed into the more wet parts of the dough. Okay. And now we're done. So now I'm going to start scooping the dough out. If you want to, this dough needs to get scooped and then kind of rolled into some smaller like cookie dough balls. If it doesn't, this dough doesn't really ever get super hard the way that other chilled doughs would. So if you want to put this in the refrigerator for 30 minutes, an hour, whatever that looks like, and then scoop and roll, you can. I tend to just scoop, put stuff in the refrigerator, and then I'll like kind of give it a nice roll and get them into ball shape when I go to bake them. So like it's really up to you when you want to do that. But I'm going to, let's do some scooping here. So I can show you guys kind of what we're working with. You're going to use a number 50 cookie scoop. A number 50 scoop is about 2 tablespoons or 25 grams worth of cookie dough. So if you also don't have a cookie scoop or the correct size of cookie scoop, you can in fact just take a spoon and weigh out, put some like saran wrap or cling film or something like that on top of your kitchen scale, spoon some dough on until it's about 25 grams, and then you can set those down and you're good to go. So I'm going to do this. They're relatively small, okay? So, and they'll bake up to about like that. Okay, so you can see the size difference. There's not a ton of spread. You want it to have a kind of domed shape. They're not like super tall, but they're relatively tall. They don't spread out very much. And that is kind of the size that you're going to be getting of the final cookie. Because these cookies chill for 24 hours in the refrigerator. Do you have to chill it that long? No, Technically you don't. Technically you don't. There'll be a little bit more spread, right? Because you are not getting that butter to kind of re-solidify and all of the ingredients to kind of come together and solidify in the refrigerator as they get chilled. And because you're not doing that, there will be more spread, but it won't be like that much because there is so much flour in this dough. That being said, I did test this with like multiple different, like, so like, you know, baked right off, baked after 20 minutes of chilling in the refrigerator, baked after 2 hours of chilling in the refrigerator, baked after 6 hours of chilling in the refrigerator. And I think I also did like an 18 hours or something like that. So like I did different time slots or different time periods of chilling. And the 24-hour one was just the best. It was the absolute best. If you're using the, I did say I was gonna talk about this earlier, the anise seeds versus star versus extract. If you're using the extract, it doesn't need to chill quite as long, but also the flavor is not as good. So I prefer the cookie the way that this is. Essentially, the 24-hour chill, again, first it allows for less spread. It lets the butter and the other ingredients really kind of like solidify up. I guess not solidify, but like it lets them harden up a little bit, gives it a denser, better structure, but it also lets the flour hydrate. So we've got quite a few wet ingredients in this recipe. We have the molasses, we have the date paste, we have the honey, we have the egg, we have the sugar, and all of those ingredients have water in them. And the longer you let the flour sit with those wet ingredients, the more moist and fudgy your cookie is going to turn out. And I want that. So that 24-hour chill for me is like super important. If you're happy with a lighter, less dense, and like drier cookie, you can go ahead and cook it sooner. And that's okay. You can bake it off as soon as you kind of want. These will work as drop cookies. It's not my favorite drop cookie, but they will work. I promise you the 24 hours is worth it. This makes about 34 cookies. So I'm gonna be here a while. But you'll see, like, essentially I'm getting these kind of uniform cookies. These you don't, like, these will spread out even more if you do them just from a scoop. You want them to be rolled into circles. And like I said, so this is my MO is essentially that I'll like pre-scoop everything. It's a really sticky dough too, just so that you know. I'll pre-scoop everything, put it in the refrigerator and chill it. And then as I'm going to bake them, I'll roll them then. They just have a lot more structure. They're less sticky when they're chilled. And it's just, in my eyes, it's easier to bake at that point, or easier to roll at that point. But if you want to roll them earlier than that, you can. It's really not that big of a deal. Jeez, I just bought this thing. It's already sounding like it's a 15-year-old cookie scoop. My other small cookie scoop broke and I needed to go buy a new one. Yes, I bought it yesterday. Sounds terrible. Need some WD-40 on this thing. Let's get to our notes here so I can talk about some other numbers like baking and times and all that kind of stuff. Let's see. Oh, this says, oh, I apologize. I think I said 2 tablespoons. That's a lie. It's 1.3 tablespoons. So a number 50 is a 1.6 inch, 4 centimeter across diameter cookie scoop. And it holds 25 grams, which it was the correct measurement. But it's essentially 1.3 tablespoons. If you're looking for volumetric measurements, if that is helpful to you. So this new cookie scoop, specifically if you can find a number 50, I don't know why none of the cookie scoops in the store had numbers on them, which was a little disconcerting for me. So I do suggest you go to a kitchen supply store if you have that available to you. It looks like this scoop that I got is smaller. I was hoping it looked like it was about the same size as a number 50. So I don't think it's going to cause that big of a difference. But I am noticing that I obviously already have 34 scooped out and that I'm probably going to get closer to 40 cookies out of this one. So it is a little bit smaller than a number 50. That's unfortunate. It's just my bake times will just be a little bit less. So instead of 10, 11 minutes, I'll probably do 9 to 10 minutes on these cookies because they're slightly smaller. We're going to rinse my hand real quick so that I can do some scraping. I scrape down the side of the bowl, get the rest of the dough off the sides so that I can finish scooping. And then I will show you guys how to kind of bake and finalize this recipe. Dude, I thought I bought a good cookie scoop. It felt really nice in the store. I was like, oh, this feels nice and sturdy, but it's like, sounds terrible. If you like molasses cookies, you will like these. I love a ginger molasses cookie. I love ginger molasses cookie. It is my favorite hiking cookie. If I know I'm going to be like out hiking, it's like all I want in my backpack. Water and a ginger molasses cookie. Okay, that's good enough. It's already broken. Once, one use out of it, it broke. That's crazy. Cool. Stuff just, this is me in my boomer era. Stuff is just not made the way that it's used to be made. Like, what do you mean my cookie scoops lasted 15 years and this one only lasted a day on a dough that's not even that? That is crazy. Cool. Okay, we're done. So I guess as you can see, this dough, like you can kind of handle it. So like if you really do want to roll, you can. It's obviously going to be better if your house is like, you keep it on the chilly side. But it will get sticky after a while. And if you have like warm hands, it's probably not the best thing for you to do. And you will probably need to re-roll them just because they'll start to flatten as they chill in the refrigerator. So in my head, let me go grab the ones that I did yesterday. In my head, it's just easier to kind of take them chilled, and then you can kind of use a little bit more force and effort, and they're like hard enough that they're not gonna start like immediately sinking and changing the way that these are. Like these are all gonna have like flat bottoms and they'll end up spreading more. The whole point of rolling it into a ball like this is to help combat spread and give you that really nice domed top. I think I'm going to send these up to get baked. Maybe just a couple of them. We're not going to do all of them. So I'm going to have my husband, if he's listening, come grab. Can you guys tell I worked on rolling truffles for 7 months? Okay, I guess if you can come and grab this tray, I have the oven on upstairs with a tray that's got a silicone mat. I don't have an oven down here, which is great. It's great for cooking streams to like not have an oven. So just bake off these 8. Just make sure that they're 2 inches apart. And they should be, right? So these guys, you can put them on the tray upstairs and then, there you go. And then bake those. I think I have it at 375. What you're gonna do is put them in the oven and then turn them down to 350. Bake them for 10 minutes, okay? Or set a timer or whatever you need. Turn the oven down to 350 when those go in and they bake for 10 minutes. Cool. He'll ask again. Where's the oven? The oven's upstairs. Okay, so this is a studio kitchen. This house has 2 kitchens in it. I have an electric cooktop and I have a microwave and I even have a dishwasher, but they don't have an oven down here. So I was really excited to do cooking streams in this kitchen and then was like, oh, I can't do most of the food that I make, especially baked goods because there's no oven. So we have to like run stuff up and bake it upstairs. That's partially why I did the pre-baked stuff because, you know, what are you gonna do? So anywho, let's see. So we've got kind of our scoops. I did kind of roll some of these, but these are going to have to get rolled again if you want them to kind of have a really good shape when you go to do them. Right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover these. Whoop. And I'm going to put them into my refrigerator to chill because that's the step that we're at. So this is as far, if you're with me today and you're cooking today, this is as far as you're going to get today. And then we're going to talk about what to do for tomorrow. Yeah, I'm looking at countertop ovens. I probably will end up getting one. I just don't know what I want to do. That's a really big helmet. Yeah, so for proofing, if I'm making like bread or some kind of dough and I'm proofing it in a bowl, I'll use a shower cap, but you can purchase 8x13, so half sheet kind of situations here, half sheet proofing like cap things. It's basically a shower cap, to be very honest, but I love them and it's so much better. I can reuse them. If it's something that isn't like kind of really messy, and instead of like trying to like get cling film to like stick to the sides and do like 2 and like patchwork, whatever the heck, it's just a lot easier. I do have these also in my Amazon storefront. If that's something that you're interested in, you can find them there. I feel like I have to put that, I didn't put that in the show notes. I feel like I have to put that in the notes for this. Yeah, the reusable ones are terrible. I wish that they worked better, to be very honest. They don't. They really don't. Is that a whole case of pineapple juice? Yes. Yes, it is. Yeah, you can buy them in, I think the ones that I've linked are like 100 pack. You can buy them in a 50 pack if you want. I just bake so much that I know that I'm going to end up using them. It might take a while, but that's okay. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do, right? So in theory, this is like you've chilled overnight, you've got your cookies, and now we're going into like baking phase. You've got your oven preheated. Please preheat your ovens. Okay, that's step number 1. You're gonna preheat your oven to 375 degrees or 190 degrees Celsius, okay? You're gonna let that preheat for 15 to 20 minutes at a minimum. So it hits the temperature, okay? So we're preheating, hits the temperature, sits at that temperature for a minimum of 15 minutes before you start baking. I know that it's really easy to just like, oh, it's preheated, and then you put your baked goods in. But the problem with the like preheated thing is that it hits that temperature, but by and large ovens, and they're all different, but most ovens have a huge, like a precipitous drop in temperature before they come back up. So they hit that preheated temperature. You open the door, you put in your baked good that you want to be baking. The temperature drops not just because the door is open, but because it hasn't had a consistent enough time for the entire oven to really come to a full temperature. And this will be true where it's like the hot spots might be the correct temperature, but like there are cooler parts of your oven. It's not a uniform temperature. And I know we've been talking a lot about uniformity today and making sure that everything is the same. And so you want to wait at least 15 minutes before you put your cookies in. And I know that's extra time and I'm really sorry, but you waited 24 hours, at least make sure that the cookies are baked correctly. And so you're gonna put those in after your oven has preheated for 15 minutes. So come to temperature and then 15 minutes, okay? Cool, yeah. And then you're going to roll up, make sure that you've got really nice, tight cookie dough balls spread out on your sheet. You're going to spread them, you're gonna put them out about, you can go as close as an inch apart, an inch between the two of them. So about 2.5 centimeters between each of the cookie dough balls, because they really don't spread that much. I tend to do more than that. I don't mind doing like multiple trays of cookies. It doesn't bother me. But if you're in a rush, that's about as closely as you can kind of put them, crowd them onto a pan. And then once they go into the oven, okay, so you started at your preheat of 375, 190 C. Once they go in the oven, you're gonna turn that oven down to 350 or 177 degrees Celsius. The reason for that, okay, the reason for that is if you want that nice dome, right, because that's what we're looking for, is that like really nice kind of dome, but it's still a soft cookie. And the way to get that is almost by creating a bit of a a baked skin. It's kind of the same concept as if you were doing like macarons, where you have the outside is going to cook super fast because it's a hotter temperature, right? And then the temperature lowers and the inside can take its time to cool, but you already have that kind of domed shape going on, right? So it creates like a shell and then the inside can kind of steam and puff up a little bit more. And so you just like kind of get and keep a little bit of that dome, and that higher temperature and then like lower rest of the baking allows for that to happen. It allows for that kind of initial burst, a little bit of that skin, and then like on the top of the cookie, that crust is probably a better word for the top of the cookie, and then the inside can steam and kind of puff up and create a little bit of a better dome than if it was at a lower temperature and then just kind of all cooked at once. So that there is a reason to them, there's method to the madness, I promise. Okay, so now timing. It's gonna go into your oven for 10 to 12 minutes, okay? That 10 to 12 minutes is really gonna depend on your oven. How old is it? What kind of hot spots do you have in it? What rack are you cooking it on? All that kind of stuff. I highly recommend starting at the lower end and then kind of checking as you get to up until the 12-minute mark. What you're looking for, okay, is you're looking for, we'll grab one of these guys, one of our pre-baked ones. You're looking for a nice brown bottom of your cookie, okay? And you may not see it, right? So like once you can really, really see the bottom of your cookies, because it is domed, it's probably getting overcooked. The cool thing about these cookies is that there is enough moisture in them, and because you've hydrated that flour overnight, even if you overcook them, they're still gonna be like chewy and soft, and they're not gonna get like super, super dried out really easily. Most of the time, because of the baking soda, you are gonna see cracks in your cookie. That's fine. Most of the time when you see a Pfeffernusse that doesn't have cracks, it's because it's gonna be one of the drier versions of a Pfeffernusse cookie. And so you're not getting a lot of that kind of steam puffing that cookie out. And then kind of as it cools, it kind of slowly comes back, and that's where you're getting those cracks from, right? So if there's a lot more flour, if the dough is denser, then it's not gonna be able to get that kind of steam puff and then kind of come down as it cools. It'll just kind of stay the shape that it is. And I didn't want that. So now we've got little cracks in our cookies. I don't care. If it's a problem for you, I highly recommend finding a recipe that has a higher flour to other ingredient ratio than the one that I'm doing today. And they usually will say, like whoever the blogger is, we'll probably put in there something about the recipe and about the texture of the cookie and all that kind of stuff. So just be aware, like be out there looking for something that's a little bit denser, a little bit more crunchy or crumbly, if you would prefer to have a smoother outside of your cookie. The other thing that you're going to be looking for is that the top of this is going to be matte. So obviously you've got a lot of moisture going on. You've got sugar cooking or baking, and all of these ingredients are kind of wet, coming together, doing their thing, right? And so it's really gonna be like shiny, sloppy, look like it's melting. And then as it puffs, the top crust part of that cookie is going to turn to a matte, like visually matte, I guess I should say. And you might see even like in the cracks, like as it's puffed, like underneath in the crack, you will still see a little bit of shine. That's okay. It's just you want the top part of that to be matte. That's how you know that the cookie has cooked all the way through, even up through the top of the cookie. So once you see that, you've got your 10-minute time, right? Maybe around 9 minutes, you can start taking a look in there. 10 minutes, they should be done. 12 minutes is really the end of that range. I know it's not a huge range, but technically cookies don't tend to have a pretty big range. And you see matte tops and you're like pretty much done, okay? These have to sit for about 5 minutes before you can do anything to them. Because they are such a soft cookie, if you try to move them with in less than 5 minutes of cooling, they're gonna just kind of fall apart on you. Which, cool, more to eat, but also you should wait. So wait for about 5 minutes or so before you can move them. If you want, you can move them to a cooling rack to help them cool off a little bit more. If not, just leave them on the tray, let them do their thing, put them like on your countertop to sit while the cookie is baking, okay? So currently, while I've got cookies baking upstairs, while the cookie is baking, you're gonna make your glaze. I'm going to grab some powdered sugar. I'm gonna grab some water. We're gonna go by volumetric measurements today, just because for this guy, I do need this back for the flour. Just because water, grams to milliliters are the same. You apply your chemistry degree to do math before baking? Yo, same. Well, I don't have a chemistry degree, but I do apply math before baking. The cookies are done. Can you hear it? Okay, cool. Thank you. Okay, we need, right? So now we're gonna do the glaze. For anybody that really doesn't like a glaze, is like, I don't really want that, it's not my jam, that's totally fine. You can just take the cookies, and once they've cooled off a little bit and you can handle them and they've kind of like solidified more, you can drop them even up to twice into just some powdered sugar and call it a day. I prefer the glaze. I think that it keeps the cookies moist longer. And I also really like the crack and crunch of glaze. Okay. Yeah, you can bring them in. All right, my husband's bringing the cookies over. Thanks, you can set them right back there. Cool, appreciate it. Let's move this out of the way real quick. We'll do a quick show and tell. Okay, so for anybody who is looking at this camera, you'll see that these are matte. There's a little bit of shininess. You can see kind of underneath this like crust that we've created, and that they are, if I tried to move these right now, this would be very bad. You can see, okay? We don't want to move them. So they're gonna chill. I'm gonna let them just rest. You guys can chill over there. I just totally pushed the corner in of this guy, that's fine. And we're gonna let those sit, and then I'll glaze those once I have the glaze done. I thought I was gonna be glazing these, but I think that I did enough talking that we may be able to glaze those today. Okay, so we need 2.5 cups or 285 grams of powdered sugar. Please, if you take anything away from today's cooking show, please buy, and it does not have to be Whole Foods. This was from Whole Foods because it was the only place that I found wandering around different places that I go. It's the only place I found with powdered sugar that has this ingredient in it. But there are, I'm sure, other stores or other places you can get it. Buy a powdered sugar that uses tapioca starch and not cornstarch. If you buy a powdered sugar that uses cornstarch, it has like a chemical flavor to it. The tapioca starch is like sweet. And so it's a much, much, much better flavor. You will have better flavored baked goods. You will have better flavored glazes. You will better flavor all of the things. I highly, highly, highly recommend that you go to the store or that when you are looking for powdered sugar in the store, that you read the back of the ingredients and you make sure that you're looking for one with tapioca starch and not cornstarch. Please do that. It's like night and day. You can test them together. Go to the store tomorrow. I don't know when you go, whenever you want to go. And if you have powdered sugar in your house, go find one that has tapioca starch and like test them side by side. And it's night and day. Like it is just a much better ingredient to get when it has the tapioca starch in it. All right, we're gonna make our glaze. I said 285, right? This should cover all of the cookies and then some. Ooh, I think I should have used a bigger bowl. Goodness, I did. I needed a bigger bowl. What do I feel like doing right now? Hey, I had the exact amount that I needed. That's great. I love how that turned out. We're gonna see if I can make this work because once I add water to this, it's going to get really dense. Okay, and then I'm only gonna use a 1/4 cup of water, which is 4 tablespoons. So I'm just gonna, do I have a 1/4 cup? Oh, I have a 1/4 cup, never mind. I was gonna say I'll use 4 tablespoons, but we'll use an actual 1/4 cup measuring cup. Okay. Let's see how terribly this goes. Why not? Yeah, see, okay. This is gonna give you a nice thick glaze. If you want it to be thinner, you can add more water or less of the powdered sugar. It's really up to you. If you also only wanna like bake a couple cookies at a time, you can quarter this recipe. I actually did that earlier when I glazed like 3 cookies. I just did a 1/4 of this recipe. So you could essentially like freeze the cookie dough and then like make a little bit of glaze at the correct ratio. It's confectioner's sugar. No, superfine sugar is actually different. Superfine sugar is just really finely ground sugar. I mean, powdered sugar is technically also really finely ground sugar, but there's still a granule to it. With powdered sugar, it's not really like a granule anymore. So superfine sugar, I think, is the same thing as caster sugar. But confectioner's sugar, powdered sugar, there's another name for it, are the same thing for that. Yes, you can put regular sugar into a food processor and it will make you superfine sugar. Superfine sugar is typically used to as an outside coating for stuff, or for like brulees and things that you need to like burn or caramelize really quickly. All right, I'm gonna call this good. If I let this sit, the leftover lumps will hydrate and then I can just get it another whisk, but we're good with this. This has not sat for long enough. These are still really soft. So I am going to use my pre-baked cookies, yay! What you're going to want to do, let's see. How do I want to do this? I need this silicone mat. Actually, you know what I can do? I can just put some parchment paper underneath. It's fine. We'll throw it away when I'm done. I like to use the silicone mats because I can clean them and there's just less waste. But we can use some parchment paper instead. You just want to, if you're going to be using a glaze, right? You have your cooling rack here and it will drip. And so you just want to make sure you have something underneath it. So I was just this is me trying not to make too big of a mess in my kitchen. I want to make sure I get all of my okay. So what I'm going to do, now that I've got this mixed up, I'm gonna get a fork. Got a really weird fork today. This will actually be really nice. I'm not used to using a fork with tines this long, so we'll see what happens with this. But essentially what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna drop it in, I guess it doesn't really matter which direction you drop it in. I think I tend to drop it in bottom down and then just kind of scoop the glaze over the top of it. Now, this is going to be a thicker glaze than the ones that are warm. What's going to happen is that if I put a warm cookie in here, it's going to heat that glaze up just a little bit and it'll come down and just kind of like be a little bit thinner because of the heat. And these are fully cold cookies, but that's totally, I mean, this works just as well, right? If you want to wait till your cookies are fully cooled, you can. I have a piece of powdered sugar that did not go all the way. Okay. And then I'm just going to set that down on my rack. The other one. These do need to sit. They're fully, like the glaze will fully dry within an hour. Again, I know it's extra time. Honestly, it is not, I can't say that I've not done this. Where you just take a warm cookie and throw glaze over the top of it and just eat it with a spoon or a fork. Fine, totally fine if that is something that you feel like doing today. I have no problem with that. Okay. But yeah, these will cool nicely. And then this is what you're going to end up with. You'll see you do have kind of one of these situations you have to deal with where it'll stick to the bottom if you're also coating the bottom and not just the top. I don't mind, does not bother me. I don't need a perfect cookie. I'm not in a professional bakery or something like that where I'm going to be like selling these. It's not a big deal to me. But essentially you can see here, this is where they were resting and they're just kind of on, and you give them like a little bit of a twist like this and then just pull them away. Right? And so you do want to be gentle. You're not squeezing the cookie when you're going to do that because you don't want to crack the glaze, right? We just got it to dry. We don't want to crack it. But you're going to just give it like a quick twist and then you're going to pull it away. And then you can see here, this is kind of what you end up with as the glaze. So you can see the texture of it. So it kind of does like a kind of crack, right? So it's a nice hard glaze. And then this is what you're getting on the inside with like the little bit of glaze on the outside. No, it looks just like that. And it's really yummy. All right, let's see what we got going over here. That's not bad. All right, these are still a little warm, but I think that'll be okay. If you like a thinner glaze, go for it. If you like a thicker glaze, also go for it. It's really up to you. If you want to double glaze them, you can. That is definitely an option. You can see where like there are spots where it's like not kind of staying on just because they're so warm. I'll give that side just a little extra dunk. If you want to give it some taps to get that glaze to really come down, that's fine. You're running the bottom of the spoon, right? So you don't want to hit the cookie on the side of the bowl because it'll take the glaze off. You really just want to run, like I said, spoon. You really just want to run the fork along the bottom until most of it's off, and then you can set it down. Okay, cool. Okay, so there's that. These are good to sit in a container. Maybe like a week or so before they start to lose any textural difference, which is nice. There is a ton of sugar in cookies. Cookies last a really long time. Most of the time they dry out before they're actually really bad. Obviously, like if they get really dried out or you start seeing mold or like any of that kind of stuff, that's essentially the point. Excuse me. That's essentially the point at which you're like, okay, maybe like these aren't so good anymore or something like that. But they last a really long time. You can also freeze them. I do highly recommend for cookies just in general, you freezing the dough and not freezing the final product. Especially if you've glazed them, because if you freeze glaze, it attracts moisture and then it gets kind of crystallized and weird, and it like when it comes back up to temperature because it had been previously frozen, it gets really sticky, and so that can kind of be like a whole quagmire. So we don't want to really do that, right? You can freeze the dough balls and then bake them off and like make a little bit of glaze and just do like a smaller amount ratio, like something like of an equivalent ratio of what's in the recipe, but like smaller, and like bake off a couple at a time, glaze them, and then have them. And they'll last. So this is like a nice Christmas cookie too, that not only can you send, but like if you have a whole bunch of plans or a whole bunch to cook, you can make them like a week in advance. And it's just like really nice to kind of have that off your plate. Let's see, is there anything? Oh, last minute stuff. I had somebody ask about star anise versus the anise seeds, anise. I say star anise, but I say anise. So like, I don't know, we're fine. We're a little all over the place with the way that I'm gonna pronounce that today. So if you want a substitute, right? Like if you go to the store and you can't find the anise seeds, you can get star anise, you can get an anise extract, okay? If you're using star anise, I recommend using 2 teaspoons or 4.8 grams of it ground down. So you've got your whole spice, right? You're putting it into your spice grinder and you're grinding it down. This recipe calls for a half a tablespoon or 3.6 grams of the seeds. If you're doing the star, then you want 4.8 grams, okay? That is going to be, so you're adding extra weight in, right? And that way that flavor, because it's not quite as punchy if you have that kind of whole spice. And so you need to kind of like pump up that flavor in order to get it to be enough in the cookie. The other thing for the extract, you're going to want to do half of a tablespoon or 7.5 milliliters. I did not, for whatever reason, do that in grams. Not sure why. I usually do even liquids in grams. But you're using half a tablespoon or 7.5 milliliters for your anise extract. The extract is an option. It's not my favorite option, but it is an option if you don't have any other options. I honestly would recommend buying the anise seeds online if you can't find them in a store over getting an extract. The extract tastes stewed, so it's going to be a sweeter flavor, right? And so you already have all of these really sweet ingredients. It's not a really good way to combat that really sweet flavor unless you're going to add some kind of acid to this recipe. And there's a little bit of acid in the molasses, but there's not a lot of acid anywhere else in this recipe. And so, and I don't know what that would do to the leavening if you're adding like something of a higher acidic content in, so like a lemon or like whatever, vinegar. It's going to kind of combine and burn off the baking soda before you're really even doing anything. And so that's something also to kind of keep in mind. So like just kind of, yeah, I'm not really sure. Like it's going to be sweeter and it's going to taste almost like a stewed flavor for the extract. I think the star anise is going to take you much further and be just a better overall flavor than if you went into the extract side of things. So just, if that's helpful, I'm not sure how helpful it is, but it just so that you understand kind of how the flavor profile might change in your cookie if you are using substitute ingredients. Keep that in mind when you're purchasing them. So I think that's everything today. We've got our cookies baked off. We've glazed a couple of them. We're sitting here nice and easy. We already have a bit of a nice kind of glaze done in these. Because these were warm, the glaze sets faster than, which is kind of funny, than the ones that are cool, right? So that warmth kind of helps steam out some of the moisture that's in the glaze. So they're going to harden faster than if you left them really nice and cold. But we were already kind of getting there on these, but the glaze is not fully hardened yet. So again, like about an hour or so, and like they're all gonna be great. And you can stick them in a tub, like in Tupperware or whatever, and that'll be fine. They won't, like, because the glaze is so hard, they're not gonna, like, unless you're like smushing them down to the Tupperware, they won't crack or any of that kind of stuff. They do really well, just kind of like all thrown together. They're not gonna stick to each other. You should be pretty good to go. And does anybody have any questions? I guess, do we have any last minute questions in the live? A baptism in glaze. That's exactly what I was going for. What's the ratio for water to powdered sugar? It's 285 grams per 60 mils of water. So if you wanted, like, essentially you'd just be using like a calculator. So like I did a quarter of this recipe earlier. We'll pull up my handy dandy calculator. 285 divided by 4, 71 and a quarter grams of powdered sugar to 15 milliliters of water. So you can do like a much smaller amount of glaze, and that'll probably take care of about 12 cookies at a time, and you'll be kind of sitting pretty in that. So if that's something that you're kind of looking to do, if you don't want to like bake all like 30, 40 cookies at a time, then you can go ahead and you can do that and just kind of do a smaller amount of glaze. No questions? You just enjoyed watching? Oh, thanks. Okay, well, thank you so much. I'm going to end this playlist video now. I'll stick around just a little bit extra for the live people. But we've got everything handled. You've got, for now, for anybody who did cook along with this video, and this is where, you know, you had to stop for the day and you're waiting on your cookies to sit and chill for 24 hours. You can come back here and you can finish out this whole glaze and all this kind of stuff. Or just wash it through the first time, and then you know what to do when it's time to go and bake. You've got your recipe up from the website, alittlespoon.com. There is also the ingredients and the instructions. I think just the ingredients. There are ingredients listed in the comments below this, or in the kind of section below this video. So you have all of the ingredients that are necessary. There is also a link to directly go to the website if you want to just read the instructions and go through it on your own without having to listen to me talk again. Really up to you on how you want to make that work. You are welcome to comment on this video if you have any other questions that I did not answer today, or if you have questions about something I talked about today that you want to know more about. I'm always kind of looking around, making sure that if anybody leaves a comment either on my website or on my YouTube or on my Instagram or any of that, that I see those and that I'm checking them and trying to answer them as soon as I can. So if you have a question, you can ask it on the website recipe, or you can ask it here. Happy to help with that. I guess if you do like this recipe, and it's not just about a question or something like that, please do star it. Give it a star rating on my website if you like it. If you've made it and you really enjoyed it, this recipe or any of the other ones that are on there, there are a lot. It's always helpful to have the internet know that people are liking the recipes that you put on it. So if you do like it, please do star it. Otherwise, thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you guys at the next cook along. Bye.
Okay.
Cool. You are so welcome. Honey, you want to eat a half a cookie? Yeah. Thanks for waiting for me, guys. Thanks for not giving me a hard time on Sunday when I was not here like I was supposed to be. Whoops. Whoops, my bad. You just made the watermelon rinds and they are good? Nice. Oh, I'm glad you liked it. I like how they're just like stay so crunchy and yummy. They're so good. Yeah. This one is also ready to eat.
6-pack, 140.
You get vertigo? I haven't gotten vertigo in like several years. Mostly because I've been really scared about getting vertigo, and I'll take Dramamine like before every plane flight because I was getting like air sick essentially. And I once, I guess it was, I don't know how many years ago it was that we went to New Jersey, but I got vertigo so bad that I felt nauseous and the floor would like kind of move. The room wasn't spinning, but the floor would move underneath me for about 48 hours after we landed. And we were only there for like 4 days. I was like, this is not okay. This is not how I want a vacation. Whoa. Hey, thanks everybody.
Well, those are for me, not for you.
Oh, okay.
Joking.
And so I had like a really hard time. These are still wet. I mean, you can do maybe like this one.
No, I ate 2. 1.5.
Okay. I had a really hard time with that, and so I got like nervous, and now I just like take Dramamine before flights, but I have not had more than like the floor kind of shift a little bit every now and then for like years. But that was like terrible. It was like the whole room was spinning. Like the whole room just kept like whatever, and it was terrible. But the Epley maneuver helped a lot.
The me maneuver.
The me maneuver. Are you still doing a GCX charity block this year? No. They're not doing a charity stream this year before GCX, so we do not have a charity block for it because they're not doing it. They're looking at doing other stuff throughout the year, but that one is no longer a thing. Like altitude sickness. So altitude sickness is nausea. It's like sudden onset nausea. I don't know. The last time I had altitude sickness, I didn't feel like the world was spinning. I just got really nauseous and my salivary glands, whatever, were like overproducing, and I was like, oh God, like this is not. I feel like I'm gonna get sick. But like I didn't have. It's like headache and nausea, but not like room spinning. It's almost like if you were drunk. Like it almost feels like you're drunk, but you're not actually drunk. So it's like really, being drunk while sober, terrible. Terrible experience, 0 out of 10, do not recommend. Do not recommend. Oh, thanks, Circle. Yogurt boy. Thanks for the 5 subs. Thanks for adding 15 minutes to the stream. Do, 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 do. Oh man. I'm guessing it's Burger Man, BGR. I'm so sorry to hear that. That's terrible. Yeah, Sag. Yeah, we don't have this charity stream, but we do intend to still do raise money for St. Jude. That's still definitely in our on our radar, something that we want to do. We don't want to give up on the cause of St. Jude just because they're not running that charity stream. And it also doesn't mean that not GCX, that Rare Drop isn't going to be doing a stream for St. Jude. It just means that they're not doing it in connection with GCX anymore. So whether or not they do it or we do it separately, we'll obviously make sure that everybody knows when we're doing it, and then we'll make sure that you've got all that information for when we do have a St. Jude charity stream. I'm really sorry for your loss. I'm interested to know what this is like when it's still. I'm going for it. Not as good. The glaze setting is better when it's fully set. Dang. Okay. I have a lot to clean. So I guess he's going to take the stream back and then continue on with the rest of his day, which I believe includes, are you in Ultimates? Is that what you're doing now?
Yeah.
Which includes a couple of attempts at minimum on the latest, yeah, which includes stalling, which includes attempts, maybe plural, at the ultimate that he's working on right now. I'm going to finish glazing the cookies that we baked and figure out what I'm going to do with these 60 other cookies that I have in this house right now. We'll see what happens. But I will see you guys next time. The next stream is on, calendar. August something, 2nd? I think it's the 2nd of August. I think it happens real fast. August 2nd, same time, 10:30 in the morning will be, Mountain will be our start time, so 12:30 Eastern. And I'm gonna be doing a tahini ginger and garlic dressing that's really good on roasted vegetables and salads and as a dipping sauce for dumplings and that kind of a thing. It's delightful. The neighbors can have the cookies too if they want some, of course. You know, it's always funny. Hi, honey, is your mouth tingling? When you eat those, do they taste spicy to you?
I got a little heat in my mouth, but nothing.
Okay. I'm allergic to black pepper, and so I never know if I have too much black pepper or not enough black pepper and stuff, because black pepper to me is as spicy as a serrano pepper because I'm allergic to it. And so I never know. I'm is it enough pepper or is it not enough pepper? Gross, leopard, gross. When your throat starts closing, just enough pepper. Yeah, I'm trying to be good about eating these. I honestly could eat my weight in these cookies, but also I have to be careful. And this is technically a large version. So like a lot of Pfeffernusse cookies, you'll see them, they're like bite-sized cookies. So they'll make them like, it's like 3 of these is like 1 cookie. Or like 3 cookies in like this one kind of a thing. And they're supposed to be just like you pop them in your mouth and go. But I like them this size because then I feel like I can just eat 1 and I'm not like trying to eat too many. Ketchup is cold tomato soup with vinegar in it. Yeah. Yeah, I'm allergic to, I'm technically allergic. The doctor said allergic, not sensitive, but I'm just gonna call it a sensitivity because I don't go into anaphylaxis, but I'm also careful about how much of everything I consume and how much it's cooked before I eat it. So like, cause obviously like fresh is worse reaction-wise than like cooked versions of stuff. But I'm technically allergic to garlic, black pepper, tomatoes, peppers of all genres, and celery. So. Birch tree pollen. Get a headache when I eat. Huh. Yeah, I love that I run a blog, but I'm like allergic to garlic and tomatoes and peppers. Like, what do you do? Yeah, I think it's a nightshades thing. Although I've not eaten eggplant with issue, but it's also been a really long time since I've had eggplant, so I don't know. If I was allergic to peanut butter, sorry, I got so startled by that comment. If I was allergic to peanut butter, end me now. It is my favorite thing in the world. I would be so sad if I suddenly developed a peanut allergy. Oh wow, so you guys are like really clean eating, man. No gluten or lactose. Worst vegetable ever. I'm not a fan of rutabaga. They're like waxy and kind of just like bland. I don't know what a rutabaga is. That's okay. That's okay. It's like a tuber. Kind of like a potato, but it's like waxy. In the not good yucca way. You clean it too when you make brownies, you lick the bowl clean. You're gonna get yourself sick on raw flour. Avoid, I'm, you know, for liability reasons, don't lick the bowl or the spoon. Worth it, of course it is. Do we like rhubarb here? Yes, I have some rhubarb in the fridge. I just got to bake with rhubarb for the first time. I've had rhubarb before in different pastries and things like that, but I've never personally baked with it, and I finally got to do that. I made a fruit crisp. I think that's in the garage though. I made a fruit crisp with nectarines, cherries, and rhubarb, and it was really yummy. They're very good. Okay, I really am gonna go. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. It was really nice hanging out. Ooh.